super excited today, guys. I have an amazing book in my hand first. So, and I don't say that lightly. You guys know that when I talk about, and I talk a lot about leadership. Today, we're going to kind of get into management, and I have Tania Luna, and I'm going to talk a little bit about your. I have it right here. Let me get into it so everybody knows a little bit of your bio. So I'm going to brag about you. You have it in the back of the book here, if that's fine. You are the
I don't have
co-founder.
to brag about myself.
You are the co-founder of Life Labs Learning, and we'll get into that. You're a psychology researcher, leadership trainer, and co-author of the book Surprise, Embrace the Unpredictable, and Engineer the Unexpected. We're not going to talk about that one today. This book we're going to talk about is The Leader Lab. But you have worked with dozens of media outlets, Psychology Today, Harvard Business Review, Time, NPR, TED, and the Wall Street Journal. But one of the things you had in here, do you have a podcast? Talk Psych to Me?
I do. It's called Talk Psych to Me, yeah.
And it's with your husband. How is that?
Oh my God, it's like our own personal relationship therapy, but out loud. So he brings the funny and I bring the psychology. And we like to think about like taking research out of the lab and bringing it into the streets. And I bring the research and then he makes it like fun and accessible and full of stories.
Yeah, because that seemed to be like that would be interesting. It'd be like next thing you know, you're going down this dark road.
I do like to do a lot of experiments on him, which is nice because I don't really need to, go through like internal review boards and blah, blah, blah. I can just be like, okay, I'm going to experiment on you and see what happens. So that's Talk Psych.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, so it's Talk Psych to Me. So I encourage people to subscribe to that.
Oh,
and then you live in New York and you have husband, dogs, cat, and the last one, I was like, what? Pigs? So do you live in the country or?
Things have really changed since I wrote the back of that. So the book is now 1 year old, I think as of like last week. And wow, life has changed. So we now actually are in rural Pennsylvania and we have 7 pigs, rescue pigs. It's going to be 9 soon. And we've got 4 goats, a cat, 4 dogs, and my husband and I. So we've got kind of like a little micro sanctuary going on with some farm animals.
That is crazy. So you rescue pigs. I've never heard of that.
Yeah. I mean, they're just pigs, but rescued from God's.
Because I know I was watching a program a while back in Texas and the problem that they have with pigs, and they were saying the how quickly they can go wild.
Yeah, like if you look at wild boars versus farm pigs versus what we have are technically mini pigs, which is any pig under 300 pounds, they're all kind of the same. Like they've got the same behaviors. They all love belly rubs. I know people who've raised warthogs. Warthogs love belly rubs. They love to snuggle with you on the couch. They like to solve problems. So.
How is there? I imagine you've looked into this before we get into the book real quick. This is fun.
Yeah, I can talk about pigs. Let's forget the book.
How are they smarter than a dog? Because I hear that.
Yeah, I mean, I always like to think of intelligence as non-hierarchical. Everyone's got their own kind of intelligence. That said, if you're just kind of pitting them against each other around things like how quickly can they learn tricks and solve problems and like trick you, pigs have dogs beat by a lot. So they're kind of like if you look at human standards of intelligence, they're like a 3-year-old, 4-year-old kid. Super emotional. They cry tears. They smile. So there's so much about pigs that I've learned that because changed my world.
That's amazing. Yeah, because they're having this. I watched this podcast where it was about dogs. Will they develop consciousness? Like in the sense of so it's interesting if you're having emotion like that.
Yeah.
I mean, if something or somebody can cause emotion upon you like that, that's interesting. That I didn't realize that they had that much emotion in them.
I got to say, I've learned to be a better leader by watching my pigs, which sounds bananas, but I just observe how they interact and how they communicate. And it's kind of taught me to be more observant and more emotionally intelligent because of my pigs, which is not something I thought I would.
That's a podcast you need to do. That's one on its own. Yeah.
Yeah.
What do they call a group of pigs? Is there like a certain technical name?
A herd.
A herd. So like leadership lessons from my herd of pigs or something.
Yeah. I think they got me to survive the pandemic. Like anytime, because I was co-CEO of my company. Now I'm chair, and I get to be slightly less stressed. But I was CEO during 2020 at the outbreak.
Oh Lord!
Just the only thing really that got me through it, other than my amazing team, I would just go and pet pig bellies and just be like, "It's okay, it's okay." It got me through it.
That's amazing. Well, let's step into, for sake of time, because I know we're not going to finish it all today because there's so many good things and I have so many little stickies.
I'm so impressed by the stickies.
Oh, yeah. No, thank you. Yeah. Lots of highlights too. The Leader Lab is the book, and I encourage everybody to get it. I have it right here. The color's beautiful too. That's our Tartle colors, so it's awesome. One of the things that you start off in the book is you start off with some bad news. That 88% of people say they are relieved when their manager is out sick. And I kind of want to stop there because and you talk about this with your research. If you could like kind of lay the outline of, like the research and who you interviewed and stuff like that. And we'll get into that a little bit more detail, but kind of just a macro view of that. And then why do majority of people not like their managers?
Yeah. So the particular study that you mentioned, that's not ours. That's a study that was done outside of Life Labs. But I can tell you how we conduct our research is by looking at managers who were named again and again in their organizations as most effective. And so that's looking at both kind of their internal NPS, so to speak, net promoter score. So would their team recommend them as a manager, but also are they achieving the results that the organization is asking them to achieve? And what we didn't want to do is just look at the people who are really good, because that's like studying people who won the lottery and asking, how did you do it? What we also wanted to do is look at people who were average, not horrible, but average. And we started off the research by just thinking, we can just ask people if they know what's leading to their results. Turns out most people don't know why. Most people will tell you things like, you have to be a great listener. And we were like, okay, let's see if there's a difference between the people who are great and the people who are average. And there isn't. Everyone says you have to be a great listener. So then we went deeper and started actually observing people in action, which to me is one of the best things we got a chance to do. And so exciting because so much of management feels like it's happening behind closed doors. Like, what are you doing in those one-on-ones? What is going on in those meetings? And managers actually opened up their doors to us, sometimes physical, sometimes virtual. And we got to observe what are the behaviors that are different and consistent across these managers who were unusually effective. And so that's what the book is about. And our delight came from the fact that it's not an infinite number of behaviors. It's actually a very, very finite number of behaviors that tips over into large number. And to go back to your question of like, why are most managers not doing this? Or why do most people report having a manager that essentially like feels more like a stressor than a catalyst for great results? I think it's, two things. One is I think people just aren't taught these skills. For the most part, what we see among our clients, and we've worked with over 2,000 companies now across the globe, for the most part, people are like, hey, you're good at your job. You should be a manager. Well, being an individual contributor is totally different from being a manager. It's like saying, hey, you seem like you're good with people. You should be a surgeon. You'll figure it out as you're going along, or get in this plane and fly it. You'll figure it out as you're flying it. So for the most part, it's no one's fault. It's just no one equips people with the appropriate skills to do this part of the work really well. And then the second part of why I think people are like, oh, finally my manager is out. This is that's something we don't go into in the book, but I think the role of the manager is set up really poorly in most organizations. In most organizations, it's like this punitive pressure role versus someone who's really there to coach you, to support you, to have your back. Ideally, your manager's out on vacation. You're like, great for them. I'm excited that they're taking a break. And also I miss them a little bit because they're here to help me. But the reality is that we're just not setting managers up well, both in terms of role and in terms of skills.
Yeah. And I want to get into this, and you have this is really cool. You say the word manager is actually pretty cringeworthy. I'm reading from the book, guys. It says it comes from the term to handle, especially tools or horses.
Yeah.
So we're already coming out this, in some super archaic industrial, revolution type word. Totally. What is the difference between a leader and a manager, and why was this word even invented?
Yeah, I mean, the word manager, you exactly got it right. It's very much industrial revolution. It comes from, oftentimes in psychology, we think about theory X versus theory Y, beliefs around human motivation. Theory X believes that humans are fundamentally not motivated unless you're either using carrots or sticks. So I've got to be watching people. I've got to hold people accountable. I got to motivate people. All of this kind of like, I'm doing things to you so that you produce results. Well, maybe that makes sense in a setting where people are doing miserable work that they don't want to do. And you kind of have to use threats to get the results that you want. Even in that case, I would say there's probably could have been a better way, but it's this theory X approaches. Humans just won't do work unless you're managing them, unless you're controlling them. Theory Y is a concept in psychology, which is much more backed by research. There's just limitless evidence that shows that what actually motivates us is intrinsic motivation, is getting a chance to learn, to contribute, to do something meaningful, to feel a part of a community. And so much about management is broken because even if we believe in theory Y, we're stuck in these theory X practices. We're stuck doing things like, well, let me review you and let me hold you accountable and let me direct you. And all of this very like forceful kind of power over approaches. And the way that we've really seen it, when we look at the managers that are excelling, they are not managing people, they're managing conditions. They're going, I don't need to motivate you. I can't even motivate you. That's not even a thing. What I do need to do is look at, what is your work environment like? Do you have the resources you need? Do you have the information you need? Are you clear why your work matters and how it impacts others? Am I supporting you in developing the skills that you need? That's not controlling a person. That is managing the environment in which this person can thrive.
Yeah, I love that. One of the things I've always thought of is, to speak to this is, if you look at Henry Ford back in the day when they, and him and many other people in the Industrial Revolution, you had craftsmanship and people being craftsmen, and they would take their time to build something. Well, we had to change that in order that we have assembly lines.
Right.
But now it seems like, especially with me, like software developers and in the tech world, as we are here, we're back to that craftsmanship level.
Yeah.
But we still are holding on to all these old
I think
ways.
we're super confused. Yeah, you're right. And it like literally in the assembly line era, the goal was to take thinking out of people's job description and give it to, that was the rise of the manager. Hey, we're going to have these thinkers and then we're going to have these doers. And now we're in this, I think, wonderful time in our evolution where we get a chance, kind of organizational evolution where we do need people to be thinking, but we're still treating them like they should just be doing. And then we're like, hey, how come you're not thinking? You're supposed to be thinking. And when you see this in schools as well, schools still are very much, designed to be these like, we will put information into your brain and then we will reward you with grades. And then you will show us evidence that the information is in your brain and then you can escape. Then we will open the door so you can release you.
Right.
Then,
that's what it is. Yep.
Kids turn to the workplace and they have this model of like, I'm supposed to be told what to do. And companies are like, why aren't you thinking? Why aren't you creative? Why aren't you autonomous?
Right.
So it's a messed up system, but it's okay because I think we're feeling the pain of it. And that's always a good thing because it means that there's much more receptivity to change.
Yeah, I love that. And, in your beginning part of your research and in the beginning of the book, you get into these behavioral units, BUs is what you call them. And we'll go over those today because I want to get specific with them because I think it's important for us to be able to kind of give a little bit of the how. And I told you off air, this book does the how, when, where, what, and why, which is very rare because most of the time you have a book, that focuses on the why. That's very popular now, and that's great. That's awesome. We need to ask that question. And the how, you'll have that, like a textbook. But you kind of do both, and then you weave these storylines and redos, so where you're actually having conversations and you can read them and see, and then be like, nope, well, let's try this again. And here's, if they use this BU, here's how this would happen. Where did this, and you call it black box, and that's what I think of, like, where did this black box come into, and how did you guys surprisingly come upon it?
Yeah. And by black box, I mean, the way that we think about it is like the black box in an aircraft or, is a pilot's tool or an aviation crew's tool to go, let's actually replay all of the things that were said and done so that we can actually learn from this, so that we can go back to go forward. And so, our black box was getting a chance to really, both Leanne Renninger, who's my co-author and co-founder at Life Labs Learning, we have a psychology background. And so we went into looking at these behaviors very naive in the sense that we didn't know what to expect. We didn't go into it going, let's see like that transformational leadership is in fact really what matters. We didn't go in with any theories. We didn't go in with any preconceived notions. We were like, let's literally just code the behaviors that we're observing and then see again and again and again which behaviors, particularly those micro behaviors, the BUs, behavioral units, which are the ones that we're seeing again and again. And so that was the thing that kind of like cracked open that
Right.
black box for us. And then I forgot the other part of your question.
No, it's like no. When you get into the BUs, and we'll kind of shift into this, these micro behaviors is what you call them.
Mhm.
So let's shift into, if you don't mind, let's shift into the 7 BUs. And why do you call them micro behaviors?
The reason we call them micro is we literally were looking at the things that take seconds. We also, so at Life Labs Learning in my company, we teach skills. So if you look at our menu, you'll see workshops like coaching skills and feedback skills. And we do talk about that in the book. But what we recognize is that the easiest thing to teach quickly, and by quickly, I mean people are literally using it that day, is to look at something so tiny that you can't, once you see it, you can't unsee it.
That makes sense.
Almost like, if you're teaching someone to drive, if you look at most leadership training, it's almost like they're trying to inspire you to drive. They're trying to have the right mindset to drive. They're trying to get you to, feel like a great driver. But that doesn't help you actually become a better driver.
Right.
And I'm dangerously far into this metaphor. I should share with you that I don't actually have a driver's license. So this is about as far as I can probably go with this metaphor. But from what I understand, if you actually want to teach someone to drive, you have to teach them stuff like, here's how you check the rear view mirror, right?
Right.
That's a thing, right? Like, here's how you do a U-turn. And so we were looking at the equivalent of those micro behaviors. We knew that you can't just teach someone to be a better leader by talking about mindset and talking about, you want people to feel autonomous. You want people to feel inspired. No, but how do you do that? What are the micro behaviors? So for us, that's what those behavioral units are. And I'd love to dig into a few of them if you'd like to.
Yeah, that would be awesome. And I want people to understand when you get into the book, it's not just let me identify these and here's the 7 micro BUs. You take half the book, chapters 1 through 7, accordingly per chapter per BU, and then chapters 8 through 15. You talk about having the skills and using the skills, whether it's coaching skills, strategic thinking, meeting mastery. All of those lead into kind of that practical how-to. So you're not just going to get a bunch of philosophy and theory. You're actually going to get like a breakdown specific, and you have a whole section on how to use this book. If you were going to tell somebody, because I know we're encouraging everyone to put in the show notes the link to buy the book. How would you tell them to use the book?
Yeah, I think that's a kind of a meta level of what we've been learning. Isn't just the what you need to learn, but what does it mean to be a good learner? And what we notice is that the people who are just incredibly like breakneck speed fast learners are the ones that actually create time to pause and extract. So, and that's actually one of the behavioral units, but they'll actually go, okay, I just read a chapter. Even if you're like, oh my God, this book is so well written. I can't wait to read chapter 2. That's me, humble bragging. What instead these really rapid learners are doing is they're going, okay, before I move on to chapter 2, let me pause. Let me see what aspects of what I just read about actually apply to me. What aspects are areas that I'm really good at that I can build on? Where are the errors that I'm making? And that's going back to the point you made before about like this do-over button concept. The reason that we went with that do-over button is, well, A, it was like my chance to write sci-fi inside of a business book. But B, it's an opportunity to really extract out what great learners and experts do well, which is they replay constantly. They're not just going, and we see this with everyone from leaders to physicians to chess masters, they're replaying what they did in their heads and they're seeking where something didn't go well. And then they're going, okay, let me either in my mind do a do-over or tomorrow when I show up to work, let me try this a different way. This is called error learning. And it's one of the most powerful ways to accelerate your learning. It's that pause, reflect, notice the error, and then do a do-over.
Yeah, we I was in the Marine Corps. We did that constantly, like all the time. Every training exercise we
after
had.
action reviews in that context.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. So we would do that, and then you had to like take a pause, step back, release your emotions and then look at and specifically like what went wrong. Like, so I think that's just a part of self-awareness. Would you think?
I think step one is self-awareness, but step two, I think it's about the skill of reflection. And I think that's slightly different, because self-awareness might be things like, why did I do that? It's everything from what happened in my childhood that made me respond that way to like, what is reinforcing this kind of bad habit? I think the reflection and extraction skill is really being able to notice those moments in your past that can be teachers for us. And so it's almost less about like self-awareness, and it's more about past awareness and noticing what happened that could have had an impact on the result, and then trying it again. There's also something in psychology called double loop learning, where you don't just reflect. Reflect is super, super important. Double loop is you go a step further and you go, what caused that to happen? So like, what was my thinking that led me to act in this way? Or what was the context that led the team to do XYZ behavior? So all of those kind of going back to retrieve insights and move them into the future, that's this reflection skill that I think is incredibly underutilized. We don't really talk about it. We don't practice it.
Yeah, that's amazing to me, because when you look at I want you to repeat what you said, because I think it's really interesting. Just you said like a past awareness instead of a self-awareness.
Yeah, I think about it as like self-awareness is what am I thinking? What am I feeling? What are my beliefs? What are my values? I think of reflection as a past awareness, like what did I do and how did it land on people? I think those are probably the two most important things. And if you want to go double loop, then it's like, why did I do it? What did I do? Why did I do it? How did it land on people? We think a lot about.
I need to practice this. This is like gold right here. So thank you. I appreciate this. This right here alone is like amazing. So because we reflect on things, but we don't take the time to understand. Like rarely do I say, and you talk about this in the book. Rarely do I say, well, how was this person feeling about this? Instead I'm like, when I do have past reflection on something, whether it's a meeting, a Zoom call, whatever it may be, I'm not looking at how the person responded in their emotional response. I'm kind of more looking at like, in general, how'd the meeting go? And did they, was there clarity, and did they understand the task?
Right. Yeah. I think like a great mindset to experiment with is to go mining for insights from your past. And the closer that past is, the easier it is, because our brains tend to blur over details, and they also tend to make ourselves look much better. The more time goes on, the more you're like, I made a great decision. I was fantastic at that meeting.
Right.
If just 24 hours goes by, there's probably still more clarity. So going back with the literal intention to go, what can I extract from this experience that I can apply in the future? And, like you mentioned in the military, in aviation, in medicine, like aviation was transformed entirely, like literally millions of lives were saved just through this process of saying, we are going to do a quick retrospective after every single flight. Low ego, no blaming. It's not about like deciding who made the mistake. It's truly about something just happened. There's bound to be something we can learn from it. It's not just about dwelling on what went wrong. It's also like, what did we do well, and why did we do that thing well, so that we can do it again? And what were errors we made, even if the result was good? What can we learn from that so that we can take it into the future?
Yeah, I know. I remember me being, as a young leader, thought I was amazing and thought that I was like going to be the next big, thing. But your statistics are, and I soon realized after people were quitting, people were having conversations with me, I was making people cry, so I quickly learned like, no, I don't know this. This is a skill. But a lot of people, like you said, a lot of leaders, like they're like, I'm a pretty good damn leader. Like I'm pretty good. But then the statistic says 88% of people don't want you around. They actually do better when you're not around. So,
I think there's oh, sorry, go ahead.
But no, I'm just you go with your thought, because I know that's exactly what I was going to ask.
Well, what I was going to say is, I think one of the reasons that there's this disconnect, there's many reasons. One is, again, no one really takes the time in most organizations to say, this is what a great leader here looks like. Here's what they do. Here's how they do it. I think that's step one. So it's kind of not your fault unless you had a clear picture of what does good look like. I think that's part of it. The other part of it is that the more power we have, what happens in our brain when we feel more power is we become more optimistic, more confident, and less empathetic. It's not our fault. It's like power just does this to us. And so it's really hard for leaders to recognize some of those gaps if they feel that, without even recognizing it, if their brain is fueled up on power. And then the third thing is that if they do have this power imbalance in their relationships, no one's going to tell you that you suck at your job because they're trying to come to you to get a raise. And that's kind of where, I was hinting at some of the job design of the manager is broken, because oftentimes companies set up managers to control too much, and that makes it really, really hard for them to be these collaborators with their teams. Because if you have all the control over whether I get fired and how much I'm paid and what projects I do, I'm probably not going to tell you that I don't feel motivated when you're around. So part of it is job design, but part of it for sure is just most of us haven't seen what it looks like when it's really, really good. And then when you have, you're like, oh my God, this is amazing. I mean, I get excited about this, not just because I'm like super excited about management. I get excited about this because, think about that 88% of people that they're like tired and frustrated and annoyed and coming home and taking out that frustration on the people in their lives outside of work. That sucks. I personally love work and the amazing things we can achieve in the workplace. This manager role is meant to accelerate that and fuel that. And great managers, they can change your life. And that's an accessible, available result if we have the skills to get there.
Yeah, no, I love that. And I love how you put it in an external, not just internal in that building or, in that Zoom call, but like externally it affects the family. Like the way that you lead, you don't realize, and I always tell my leaders this, you don't realize how much you affect a person. Like, I mean, and how important your words are to that person. It's life or death. I mean,
yeah.
Yes.
For sure. I mean, like, think about like you can spend 2 minutes, 2 seconds saying something like you never bring good ideas to the table. And you're like, well, that wasn't a terrible thing to say. It's true. And then the person goes home and they're miserable and they're depressed and they're rethinking their entire lives. And it doesn't mean that you don't give feedback as a leader. You absolutely need to, but how we deliver a message has a massive impact on how people see themselves and how people see the workplace, how they show up for their team. It's like the power is massive. With great power comes great responsibility, said an uncle of a superhero.
Yes, I love that. Well, I just got done watching a TV show. I won't mention the show, but it's on HBO, and it's a business show, and everybody's kind of fighting for positions and stuff. But there was a presentation that was done wrong, and this person found out like right before he was going into this huge account. And the client that they were talking to was really big on this certain font, like, and he had messed up one page. He forgot to click their font for their corporation, and it was Times New Roman. In the show, and this is an exaggeration, but this does happen rarely, but in the show he committed suicide, which is sad. Wow. But over a font, but it had nothing to do with the font. It had everything to do with that leadership culture.
Yeah. And do I feel respected as a person? Do I feel dignified? Do I feel seen as a person? And then on the manager side, one of the things we talk a lot about at Life Labs Learning within our company is how do we turn the workplace into this practice lab for learning life's most useful skills. Every one of those interactions, if I genuinely hate a font, fantastic, because that's my practice lab to go, how do I deliver this message in a really constructive, helpful way so that everyone here is actually leaving that conversation more inspired versus now they have to spend hours and hours and hours like dragging themselves out of the mud that I just slung onto them.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. Going back to the pigs, I think that's a great analogy, like slinging mud.
Yeah, I mean, do you want to make like if your job as a manager is for things to go faster and smoother and easier and lighter, like anything that we do that oppresses and pushes down and like piles weight on top of people is not doing our jobs as managers.
Yeah, and the good news is with all this, we're talking about kind of the deficiencies. And the good news with all this is these little BUs What percentage did you see in your research where somebody was average or below average manager leader and they applied some of these or applied all of them? And what percentage did they excel at? Like, did they become a great manager in a year or two, or how did that work?
Oh, I wish I could answer that. So we didn't measure it like that in terms of like what is your kind of percentile now in the company. What we do measure is 1 month, 3 months, 6 months, and 12 months post training. And in some cases, we've done 3-year post training case studies. What we find is over 90% say these tools have helped me be more effective. And what we and the 99% last time we measured, and this is with thousands of learners, say, I'm still using the tools that I learned. And then when we do case studies with organizations, what we find is that after going through training, manager effectiveness scores tend to go up anywhere between 20% to 30%. So I wish I could answer your question more directly, but we've seen more kind of those global effects. And the amazing aspect of this is we don't do these long, drawn out trainings where everyone's just like sitting there tortured by knowledge being crammed into their heads. We kind of get in and get out. Everything we focus on is speed to change. So how do we give you the most important tools quickly, and how do we help you learn those tools quickly? So after I'd say about like a 10-hour commitment, we're seeing that lasting result 3 years later with people saying, I'm now getting the results that I want on my team. We did do a case study with about 100 managers where 3 months and 6 months post-training, 90% of direct reports in the who reported to the managers in the program said that they felt that their manager was really successful in their role. So that was pretty amazing. We haven't gotten a chance to do that with, our 350,000 participants, which is roughly how many people we've taught at this point. But in that case study of 100, we felt very, very excited to see that result.
That's wild. I mean, think about that. That gives so much hope
I
to
know.
people. If you're in the fog and you feel like you're just kind of stuck as a manager, or you're not very passionate about your job, or I mean, if you at one point in your life you were passionate about it, but now you're not, I mean, you don't want to switch, and you've been in there for a while, like working on these BUs can literally change the dynamic like huge.
Well, and our number one promise to our workshop participants and to our readers of the book is our job is to make your job easier.
Right.
Most people go into management because there's a passion there somewhere. Maybe it's a passion for the result, maybe it's a passion for helping people develop, but no one takes this job. I mean, maybe some people take this job, but most people don't take this job on without some of that commitment, because it's hard. It's really hard. It's strenuous, especially these days, working remotely, working cross-culturally, working with, fear of the economy. Like people are coming to you with their emotions. People are coming to you with their problems, and you have to like manage policies and maybe timesheets and maybe budgets. It's a really freaking hard job. So the way that we think about it is like, we never want to go into a workshop and say, you're screwing this up. We want to go, you are doing a really important job and you have been underserved. So let's make your job easier so that you can have fun with it. So that at the end of your day, you are feeling great about the impact that you're having, not just in your workplace, but on the world.
I love that, because, it's, and I want to get into these real quickly. I want to start with the first one, Q step. And people need to understand whenever we're talking about, these are very easy things that you can do. This is not hard. So if you're a young manager, we have a lot of people in their 20s that listen to the podcast, in our demographics, young professionals, millennials. This is easy to grasp. This is not hard. This is not something that, you're having to study for your master's degree. And, this is very, very simple. And so I kind of want to go through some of these, if you don't mind, from maybe like a millennial perspective, if you could, and kind of, so what would Q step be?
Yeah, Q step, if you're going to do nothing else, do this one. This is overwhelmingly the biggest differentiator of great managers versus average that we saw in our research. We call it Q stepping because for great manager, what we noticed is that their first step is to ask a question. Their default is a question mode versus a response mode. So as an example, if you look at an average manager, someone comes to them, and like, this is one of the examples we use in our workshop. Someone comes to you and says, I want to take on this project and I'm so excited about it. And maybe this is a direct report who's behind on deadlines, who has been really inconsistent, who's kind of spread too thin. Average manager will go, no, like There's not enough time. There's not enough resources. Another version of an average manager is to go, yes, absolutely. Yes, I want you to be, I want you to do whatever you want to do. So there's either like the dominance or the appeasement model. What great managers do is they step toward a question. So they might say something like, tell me more about this project. What's exciting to you about it? What's important to you about it? They might ask questions like, can you share how you see success for your work this month? Can you see what might get in the way of you achieving your goals? What are some upsides to doing this project, and what are some downsides to doing this project? And just hearing questions is going to make the person feel seen and feel, like, okay, this person is lifting me up versus pressing me down. So that's the kind of motivational, emotional side of it. But the more important piece I get really excited about is questions are like this muscle builder. So many managers, especially either inexperienced managers or managers who are just really great problem solvers, they're the ones that are, if you think about like a physical trainer metaphor, they're the ones, someone comes to them with a problem and they're like building their own problem solving muscles. They're lifting the weight themselves. A question makes me give you the weight and support you in lifting that weight so you could build your muscles. And then my job is I'm helping you solve the problem versus I'm solving the problem for you.
Yeah,
This is a tiny behavior, but the impact is massive.
So, like, just to play this out, because you already played it out a couple times, and I want to like go into this, like, because these piggyback on each other, and you can use these, and you talk about this, you can use these in different variants.
Yeah.
And maybe that's kind of more the advanced step in it. But if I wanted to use the Q step with number 2, playback, how would you do that?
So playback is essentially making sure that you've understood someone and making sure the person feels heard. So a playback, I'll just do a playback of what, oops, sorry. I had a little alert. No, how do I turn this off? Sorry.
You're going to have like a spam texts, a bunch of them. It'll be funny.
Yeah, it's actually, it totally is. I just got an advertisement for weed whackers.
Well, you are in rural Pennsylvania, right?
I guess so, but we already have a weed whacker. I'm so sorry. Yeah, where do you want me to take it?
So playbacks. Let's get into that.
Yeah. So an example of a playback would be, let's say that direct report comes to me and says, I'm really excited to take on this project. A playback would just be something like, okay, so it sounds like what's really motivating you right now is this project. Did I get that right? The point here is not to double the length of all of our conversations. The point isn't to just like parrot back what the person is saying, but truly it's just to show the person I heard you. As a manager, it also buys me some time. So maybe if I'm like, I can't believe that you want to take on this project, that cools me off a little bit. And then the most important thing is like, are we actually aligned? Because, this person who came to me said she's so excited about the project. Maybe my playback is, okay, so it sounds like the thing that you want to prioritize right now is this project. Is that right? And she goes, oh, no, I don't want to prioritize it. I'm putting it on the back burner, but I just wanted to talk to you about it because I'm so excited. So a Q-step playback combo, if you want to like turn it into a dance move, might be something like, okay, so it sounds like you're really excited about this project. Can you share with me how you see it lining up with your other priorities? So that's that kind of 1-2 punch of I've understood where you're coming from. I've checked that we're talking about the same thing. And then I'm helping you and me progress forward through this very simple question. And the playback and the Q-step are particularly if you're working at a distance or cross-culturally, miscommunication just like runs amok. So these are also really, really important tools for that.
So getting to the third one, I want to ask you this question. I know you've seen this before. How does a passive-aggressive leader deal with deblurring?
Okay, so deblurring is training your brain to notice whenever something is blurry or vague, kind of mentally underlining it, and then taking the blurriness out of it. And you could deblur yourself, like you can say, "I'd like you to get this to me ASAP," and then I go, "Oh, by ASAP, I mean by 5 p.m. today." Or it's deblurring others, like, "Can you tell me more about what you mean by passive aggressive?" So I'm going to deblur you. What do you mean by passive aggressive?
I like for me. I'm thinking of a couple leaders that I know that do not want, they try to always stay in the gray and be optimistic. So they don't want to have that coaching conversation because they're just hoping that it's kind of like that Pollyanna where I'm just hoping that it's going to go away. And then if
Yeah.
I'm nice enough and I give them enough freedom, maybe hopefully they'll figure it out without
Yeah.
bringing like de-blurring in and bringing clarity.
Oh man. So I'm really grateful that I de-blurred you, because I would have assumed that you meant something different by passive aggressive. So that's just one of the reasons that de-blurring
Oh,
is
okay.
helpful.
Yeah.
What I would say there is another BU that we found is something we call link up. So link up to the purpose, link up to the goal, link up to your reasoning. So probably what I would say there is, hey, the reason I'm asking what the timeline will be is that without knowing the timeline, it's going to be really hard for us to collaborate across all the different departments, or whatever that link up is. So often the link up is helpful with any of these tools. For example, maybe I'm working with someone who's really defensive. And so instead of just asking, well, can you tell me what's important to you about this project? I might say, I would really love to learn what type of work you're drawn to here. Can you tell me what it is about the project that you're excited about? So by linking up, I'm now creating this frame for the individual to understand where you're coming from. Or by de-blurring, I might even say something like, I recognize that there's a lot of ambiguity around timelines, but the reason I ask is that we need to be able to tell our client when this is going to be delivered so they can trust us. So it's that link up, the de-blur, and the Q step all together. It's like a Swiss Army knife of tools, small number, but you can do lots of cool stuff with it.
Yeah, and I think this is going to show out right here, number 4. Let's stick with this and let's use the this defensive person, because we all have somebody on one of our teams that may have like a victim mindset, maybe a little defensive.
Yeah.
How would you validate to someone like that?
Yeah. So validating is a really underused one, especially like we work with about 50% of our clients are in tech and engineering. And so they tend to be very, very results focused, which isn't to say they don't care about people. Certainly they do, but it's like, hey, let's get the work done. Let's ship it. So the validation step is something that's often missed. Validation essentially just means taking a moment to demonstrate or show to the person that their perspective is that you get it, that you respect it, that you see them, that you recognize their challenge. You mentioned defensiveness. When people have their defenses up, it means that in their brains, they're assuming that there's some sort of battle going on, that you don't understand the difficulty they're going through or the pain that they're experiencing. What research shows is that as soon as you name what that individual is concerned about or what that individual is feeling vulnerable about, they're able to put that defense down because you've already shown them that that's not part of, that's not your attack. So to the individual that you're talking about, I hope you're listening, whoever you are, I might say something like, hey, I know how important it is for you to not disappoint the client. And I recognize that that's why it's really hard to commit to a deadline. The reason I ask, though, is that we need to be able to gain the client's trust, because without giving them something, they won't be able to rely on us.
I love that.
Within that context, what do you think? Like, what do you think we can commit to that both gives you a little bit of buffer and gives us the ability to gain trust with this client? So like that's an example of a validation. Another simple validation could be like, I know this is really hard, or I know that you've worked really long hours on this, or I really appreciate that you're coming to me with this challenge. Any of those little like, I'm stepping out of what's in my mind and acknowledging what's in your mind gets people's defenses down.
That's amazing. I love that one. That's like a superhero tool right there for leaders.
It really is.
I mean, you could just use that one alone. If you come off just in your coaching sections, if you started that way, how much more information would you get?
Oh, I mean, imagine what it would be like to have defenseless conversations. Everyone's coming in, and instead of having to do the work of breaking down someone's defenses and trying to get to the other side, you just immediately get to the other side. It's joyful. It's delightful. And I think that the framing it that I think is really helpful there. It's like me and you versus the problem. Anytime the conversation turns into me and you, it's wasted time and effort and energy. Like, why? And this applies to any relationship. Why focus on the me versus you if we have a shared goal? As soon as we have a shared goal, we have this incredible opportunity to go, okay, we're on the same side. There's a problem here, and that we can't quite figure out how to achieve XYZ result. Maybe we both see it differently. Maybe there's a limitation here. Maybe there's a gap here. let's together take a look at this problem and figure out how to fix it. And that
Oh, that's
immediately
so good.
becomes
Yeah.
fun, it becomes exciting.
Yeah. It's because the us versus them is just so prevalent. I mean,
Yeah.
that's been the whole, as great as we do, across the globe in business, and as amazing as everything is, we still, that's why we have borders and flags and all
Oh
that. There's this
yeah.
us
We're
versus
very good at
them.
us versus them. Yeah.
Right. Right.
What's super interesting is like our brains, yeah, we kind of evolved for us versus them, for better or worse, maybe worse. We even see research on empathy that shows that the more empathy you have for your in group, the less empathy you have for your out group. So it's really hard to remember to take that sort of natural, human tendency to protect ourselves, to walk into a room and say, how do we draw that circle around both of us or all of us versus draw this line between us? And it, again, the thing that's really exciting about it is like you talk about problems we're having across the country, which sounds like totally intractable and impossible to solve. And I'm not saying validation statements will solve everything, but I guarantee you that at that one-on-one level or even small team level, that's where it starts. It's saying like, let me show you that I can understand how you're thinking and feeling, and that what you're thinking and feeling is real and meaningful and valid, even if we disagree. Let's just start there.
Yeah, and I've heard this before, and I always think about this. Too many people get their identity in their beliefs.
Yeah.
Without understanding it as almost like it's an external thing, and those change and evolve.
I think that's one of the things that we get most defensive about. And that's one of the reasons validations are so powerful and deblurring is powerful, is so much of conflict in the workplace is actually about identity. It's actually about like, are you not seeing me as competent? Or are you seeing me as someone who's not trustworthy? Are you seeing me as someone who's not capable? Any of those kinds of things. Immediately, there's a part of the brain called the amygdala. Actually, there's two of them, and they monitor essentially threats to identity. And immediately, as soon as you start making me feel not like my ideas are wrong, but that I'm wrong, that's where defensiveness flares up. There's something called an amygdala hijack that we talk about in our workshops, where essentially your neocortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for thinking and planning, it just gets literally like taken over by the amygdala. And the best you can do is like try not to say horrible things, but you're probably not going to say super helpful, constructive things.
Yeah, that's so good. And I think the more self-aware you become in recognizing that, it's like, this is just some chemical thing that's happening in my brain.
Yeah. Yeah. It's like, no big deal. This is like a quirk of human nature, but also let me recognize when it's harming me and others.
Right.
And again, the good news is it's easy. It's relatively easy, especially with some deliberate practice. We see these kind of micro behaviors, and that's why we focus on the micro. We see these micro behaviors stick really, really quickly. It can take practice. It can take some unlearning if you're used to, for example, problem solving instead of stepping toward that question. But as soon as you see it, especially if you do a little bit of what we talked about earlier of reflect back and go, okay, how many questions did I ask during that last conversation? Or was there a moment where I could have asked a question instead of giving advice? And the quicker you are at developing that cadence of reflecting backward to pull insights into the future, the quicker these things turn into habits.
Yeah, Tania, for sake of time, last question I want to ask you, and that's to wrap up these, and we'll do them both at the same time because you give explanations in the book on this, is pause and extract.
Yeah.
So could you explain that? Because I think this is something that out of all these, this is the one that I need to work on the most.
Wait a minute. Isn't your company TARTLE? What did you tell me the definition
Yeah,
was?
exactly. This is so funny. This is so great. I'm going to have to tell the CEO this. He's going to laugh. Yeah, it's an awkward pause between two new people that are meeting. That's
And
the
which
pause.
let me cue step you just a little bit, because it sounds like your identity is that you are someone who is not good at these things. But I just want to like poke around in that assumption real quick.
Oh yeah, no, I'm an open book, so this is fun.
Okay, so what drew you to this idea of the awkward pause when people meet?
It's not recognizing someone as my idea is more important than theirs, and I already have the answer. So why do I need to pause and extract? And I get the whole idea. It's a good thing to do for them to take ownership. I understand that part. Jocko Willink, actually, a Navy SEAL leadership guy. I don't know if you've heard of him or not. He wrote some leadership books. He talked about that, like in the sense of having them take ownership. having people take ownership, and that you do that by asking questions, which you wouldn't think military wise, people just barking orders.
Okay. So it sounds like, to play that back, it seems like the obstacle for you is that it feels kind of inefficient and frustrating to pause and ask questions if you're really confident that you already have the answer. So why not just move forward?
But that's ego though on my end, because it's like when I've done that, when I've paused and extracted, I've heard, I'm in marketing, so it's like people are extremely creative, especially when you're dealing with people all across the globe. So it's so ego on my end, but I'm in a habit of doing it, I think. My mindset is to pause and extract, but I'm in that habit of just railroading,
Well, okay. So, and I'm just like naming the BUs I'm using just so you can see them in action. I'm just going to link up for a moment because maybe it's ego, but another aspect of it might be like to link up to, well, what is the goal? Is the goal to solve the problem quickly, or is the goal to develop the capacity for your team to be able to solve problems in the future? And it really depends on what you embrace as your job description. If you're a problem solver, it does not make sense to ask questions and spend all this time, developing internal capacity. If your job is to be a builder of a problem solving, team, and to be able to scale your problem solving prowess, then more naturally, your inclination will not be to go, how can I solve this as quickly as possible? You can go, how can I develop people to solve this? And what is the fastest and most efficient way for me to help people develop? How's that landing on you?
That's good. I mean, right off the bat, I'm like, I'm getting my identity off of problem solving because then I'm wanted and needed. And I have all the answers and I'm the man, and then paired to, empowering others to create that system, because that's what I want. Ultimately, as any leader, you want to create other leaders.
Yeah. Yeah. And it could be that, it's one of the hardest aspects of leadership is, I know before you asked the difference between a leader and a manager, and I'm just remembering that I didn't answer that. But I think, I actually don't see much of a difference. A manager is a role, whereas a leader leading is like a practice or a set of skills, and we can all lead even if we don't have an official manager role. And sometimes we rotate through leadership and followership. But I think so much of what's difficult about the manager role is that delay of gratification. When I am an individual contributor, I get to do a thing and then pow, there's that like dopamine burst in my brain of I did it. I'm awesome. I know how to do this. As a manager, that delay of gratification, especially if I'm a manager of managers or a manager of managers or managers of managers, is like, I need to wait for seeing that payoff of people grow, of people learn. And so the workaround for me is I get my instant gratification by going, I asked a good question, or I paused long enough that I saw the individual take ownership of the problem versus coming to me and looking to me for the solution. So I think those BUs, again, are helpful in guiding you through, okay, I'm doing a good job. Whereas that's before, a solution would have shown you that you're doing a good job.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's something, for me, it's like whether it's affirmations or whatever it may be, like writing on 3x5 cards and putting them everywhere, putting them in my office, So I'm going to write out, pause, and extract and put them everywhere.
I love that. And you can do it on your own.
I have to be reminded. I set alarms on my phone for, so I can set it like 11 o'clock in the afternoon. It'll say pause and extract and it'll go off. And then it just forces me to be, I'm really.
Leanne, my coworker, co-founder, she actually has a pause button tattoo.
Oh, that's cool.
I see you have some tattoos. So if you want to add to it.
Yeah, that would be awesome. I need a pause tattoo. Yeah.
Or if you don't want to go tattoo, like one of the things I do, especially if I'm like noticing myself getting a little like, oh, I really want to solve this. I'm getting really frustrated or I'm getting really annoyed. I have like a secret pause button in the palm of my hand. There's no tattoo, although I do have a Life Labs Learning tattoo. But this is like kind of a secret one that I'll like squeeze my palm. And that's a reminder for myself to go, like, let me relax. My husband and I we have a new thing that we're trying where we give each other like the little gesture of walking down the escalator to de-escalate each other. So if we notice ourselves starting to get like the tone of our conversation is like unnecessarily escalated, we'll just give each other the down the escalator walk.
That's so awesome.
Yeah. Okay, you're right. Let me de-escalate. And again, the purpose is not for you to develop the solution, but for you to be able to do this amazing thing, which is invest in other people's ability and invest in your entire organization's ability to do great things.
I love that. And Tania, on that note, sadly, we only got through half the book, so I got to have you come back on, but to get the other half done. But the Leader Lab, I encourage everyone to buy this, literally everyone. I'm going to buy extra copies and give them out. I think it's awesome.
That's awesome. Thank you.
Yeah. And I talked to you off air. I was talking to you about our organization getting a part of this. Because we have a lot of organizational people, enterprise people, if they're listening to this and they want to know more, just besides buying the book, how can they learn this? Do you guys have online modules, training?
Yeah.
You guys go to corporations? What's the best way to get a hold of you that way?
Yeah. So I would say go straight to lifelabslearning.com. That's the bulk of what we do. So we do live and digital, but it's always programmatic learning experiences. We work with companies all over the world, from TED and Squarespace to Warby Parker to the New York Times. So we work with this broad range of amazing organizations. We get to learn from them, and then we get to teach. So absolutely, lifelabslearning.com is a great place to start. We've got workshops for companies where we teach private workshops, and then we have workshops that are open to the general public as well.
That's awesome. Thank you, Tania. Appreciate it for being on the podcast. This was amazing, and definitely you can tell the work that was put into this. This is a brilliant piece of art here.
Thank you. And thank you for being such a deliberate extractor. I'm like so impressed with how much you took out of that book. So it's a dream come true. It's the whole point. You're sitting there in this lonely room trying to write this book. So the fact that you're giving me that feedback means the world. Thank you.
Well, thank you.